Welcome. This is Inside the Leader's Mind, where what's in the way becomes the way. I'm your host, David Suson, and I'm excited to have our guest today, Sharon Hulce. She is the president and CEO of Employment Resource Group, that's ERG. They're a nationwide executive search firm based in Appleton, Wisconsin. And with 30 years of experience in executive search and as a business owner, Sharon brings a unique perspective to leadership and what works within an organization. Sharon has recently been awarded a Stevie Award for Best Female Entrepreneur of the Year. She's a Titan 100 Hall of Fame honoree, 100 Women to Know in America honoree, and is a Forbes best-selling author of A Well Done Professional Midlife Crisis. Sharon, welcome.
Thank you, David.
It
I'm
is so
excited to
good
be
that
here.
I'm excited to have you. I know we chatted a little bit ahead of time, and I'm just excited to have you. I would love to start with just telling me a little bit about. I actually want to hear about the book just a little bit. A Well Done Professional Midlife Crisis. Just tell me a little bit about that and kind of what spawned that, and then we'll get into more job, career, leadership.
Well, I'll be really honest about that. So, a lot of people get referred to me at different points in their career, and there tends to be two things that create a professional midlife crisis. And surprisingly, they're both personal. One is turning 50. So, at 50, people kind of reflect on my life is half over, assuming they're going to live to be 100. And they start reflecting on, is this all there is, right? Is this what my career
Oh,
is going to be? Or the kids leave. So all of the, their ownership of the sports and the drama and the friends that are their kids' friends and all of that um, ends up being something that makes them start to reflect on their own life. So they start coming to see me and they like, I really, I do really well. I make great money, but I don't love what I do.
mm,
So I started having all these conversations over and over and over again. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to write a book so I can give them the book. They have exercises they can do and then come back and see me and we can have a meaty conversation about what really is next. Is it entrepreneurship? Is it I have to change jobs or is it I can stay within the job I am? I just need to figure out how to bleed passion and energy back into what it is I do. So it isn't just about like I need to change careers. It's like really reflecting on your whole career and what is truly next for the last run at 50 in essence, because 45 to 55 is when people hit that midlife professional crisis. So it's kind of that whole spectrum of what it could be, all the reflection points, and then figuring out how do we help them to do what's next.
wow. Yeah, that's it. It's amazing how many people I've met that have gone through the same
Oh, me included,
challenge.
by the way.
Did that, did that also spur it on for you to do the
It
book, not
did.
just your clients, but for your own reflection?
So mine started when I got divorced. And,
Yeah.
so I have this 8-year-old daughter, I'm getting divorced. And I was kind of like, all right, now is my chance to sort of recreate what I want my life to look like in totality, right? Not just personally, but professionally. And I knew that I wanted to stay in the business I was in, but I was getting bored. I was doing the same thing over and over and over again. And I thought, I have to start reinventing myself so that I'm constantly challenging myself to be better. So I went to Harvard Business School. I mean, I did all these like super, like outside the box things that farmer daughter don't do. And it kept me energized and passionate about staying in the business that I was in. I think if I would have just stayed and did search the traditional way, I probably would have eventually said, I don't want to do this anymore. So I think for everybody, we just have to like figure out a way to constantly reinvent ourselves to stay energized. So I did it myself and then I decided to write about it.
Okay, so I want to back up just a little bit because you run an executive search firm. What did you do different then after you went through this self-exploration that either re-energized you or got you back in? What was it that you did different?
Well, a plethora of things, right? And all of it over time. So We became an EOS company, which I am a huge fan of EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System. It's based on the book Traction. I give a lot of credit to sort of the significant growth of my company from EOS, so I love that. Um, we started hiring in a different way. So we instead of hiring the traditional recruiter, we started hiring people who really were more that fit our values better, really more consultative advisor approach as opposed to got a guy, want a guy. I never liked that contingent type business. We haven't been contingent in 100 years. And so really getting more into what is it that's going to make us a better advisor in totality for our clients and understanding not just who they need, but why they need them and how they're gonna impact the organization. So, for me, it just became more fun because I was able to really take everything that I had learned in all the years of being in this business and help organizations to sort of catapult their growth quicker through the right people.
How many years ago did you start making this shift?
So, it took me 5 years to write the book. Uh, Today it wouldn't take that long, but back then, it took a long time. So probably, um,
So 5 to do the book, but as far as your company hiring for
well, so I would
values,
tell you I'm 30 years I've been doing this. I would say probably a good 15 years ago I started the evolution, and 10 years ago we ran up the hill. I mean, really like flip over all the leaves. We're going to do this in a very different way. We're going to make a commitment to not negotiating, not changing. We're going to be committed truly to our true north. So I would say probably 10 years ago, where we just said like if it doesn't fit people, that's okay. We don't have to be all things to all people, but for the people that we are right for, we are going to be significantly right. So I would say probably 10 years ago, where we really made that commitment, and I started really committing to my own personal education, growth, um, learning. I read all the time. I think all really big CEOs that I know of, people who are really pushing themselves, they're voracious readers. So I made a commitment to becoming a voracious reader, even things I don't love to read. Made a commitment to reading them. Um, and all of that has been really a great personal journey to what I think is, sort of that significance of figuring out that, okay, we can be so much more than we were before if we just make a commitment to, learning and growing and trying things and failing and then trying it in a different way. We've failed at a million things. We've failed at more things than we've been successful at, and I'm okay with that.
but you were willing to take that risk, which I love.
Absolutely.
I want to clarify a couple things if people aren't familiar with
Mhm.
the executive search world. So contingency search is commission.
Yeah,
So you're not getting paid until they hire someone. And as you mentioned, you moved away from that. So that retained search then is people are paying you as I'll call it a consultant, and
yeah,
you're getting paid. The advantage of that for those people that aren't familiar with this is you are more committed to the client to really getting the right
yeah,
fit because you want to continue a relationship. Whereas contingency, when you work with contingency recruiters, oftentimes it's throw whatever sticks,
right.
throw spaghetti on the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And they don't care as much about the relationship. So those of
I
you that are
travel
executives,
Yeah, I travel a lot, in my role because I love to go out and spend time. One of my favorite things, so we work construction and manufacturing and banking and, a lot of, across the top HR, all those. Those are positions where you have to feel the environment. I love nothing more than to walk a plant floor or a job site with the leader of the company because you get a real sense of culture very quickly. Nothing's more effective than walking a manufacturing plant floor with the CEO and watching how people react. Do they, hey, how are you? Or do they scatter? I mean, there's so much that you learn about an environment, and two, it helps us to be able to help them to make changes if they want to make changes. So I love that's my favorite thing to do in my job.
so I have a question. You've done this 30 years. You work with a lot
Mhm.
of companies, a lot of executives, et cetera. You see different cultures. You get the feedback from candidates that are applying for a
Mhm.
job. You get the feedback from leaders. My question is, how has that and what you've seen and learned from others impacted your own leadership style and
Mhm.
actually the way you lead your business, the culture?
Well, here's what I would tell you. I think the best leaders, so the people I would say I would wanna emulate, they're very self-aware. They know their strengths and they know their weaknesses, and it's when someone I usually when we see issues within organization, my job is to say, "Okay, Mr. or Mrs. Leader," sometimes it's just a simple matter of looking in the mirror. So, my own personal reflection of what am I good at, what am I not good at, help me to put people in place within my own leadership team who are strong where I'm not. And then my strengths can shine and I can focus on where I'm strong. And then where I'm not, I have other people. Like I'm really, I have great intuition. I have my father's intuition and I can just figure out what people need without, they don't have to tell me. I can just listen to what they're saying and I can figure it out. So that's my strength. I'm not the most empathetic leader. I'm fairly impatient. I've been a recruiter 30 years. I grew up in a farming community. I grew up where it is get it done. I mean, so I have tremendous urgency, low patience. I mean, you know. So for me, when people need an empathetic leader, I'm not their go-to person, but I have a person on my team who is tremendously empathetic. So understanding that as I went through and I watched other organizations and where they struggle, really looking in the mirror and say, okay, what are you good at and what are you not good at? And what you're not good at, put people in place so those that need that kind of leader have that accessible to them because everybody's different. People engage with different people. Some people love my style and they love how fast I move. I mean, I move so fast, I drive people crazy. And my coach said to me, you have to understand, no one will ever move like you move. So the reality is just understand that you can't expect people to keep up with you. So find people that can help them to do the job in the way that works for them, but still effective. So I would tell you that it's that. It's that self-awareness, looking in the mirror, and then build a team of people that are strong where you're not necessarily the strongest.
What for you, what's been the hardest part when you made that mental shift? What was the hardest part about doing that?
Letting go. Like, seriously, you know, I think any especially a small business owner, um, it is anything they can do, I can do better, which is not good and definitely not true. So for me, it took me years to figure out that the only way my organization is gonna grow is if I don't have to control everything. And that's a very common trait in most CEOs. So I literally had to say, you know what? They might not do it as well as you do it, and they might not do it like you do it. But that doesn't mean that's bad. It just means it's different. So it took me years to be willing and I look back and I think I was not a great boss early on and I know that because I wanted to control everything. And now I'm to the point and I think some of that comes with age too as I've gotten older. uh, it, as long as we deliver a fabulous outcome, how we get there isn't as important. We have a process that works. Everybody follows the process, but there are parts and pieces that each person will do in a different way.
So I love that. Let me ask you, because I think change comes from a couple reasons. One reason change occurs is we're struggling.
Mhm.
I'm losing people. My clients aren't happy. We do an employee survey, we do a 360, and the feedback is they hate me. The other change comes from the truly a choice of I want to get better because I'm just an achiever and I'm looking at stuff and I want to get better, not because people are unhappy. And then I think the third, and you see this in a lot of tech companies, is I have to step away. I have to because our growth is so out of control.
Mhm.
I can't do it myself. So some small companies, their growth isn't out of control. It's, I want to grow. That would be the
Right.
choice part. And then the other is things aren't going well. Which of the three, if that was clear, do you think was the
Yeah.
bigger motivator for you?
Well,
The
certainly all three. And I would tell you the life cycle of companies, all three will play out at some point. So one of the things, change by necessity. I've been through three recessions, 9/11, and a pandemic. That'll make you change because
oh
you
yeah,
have to, right? There are situational things that happen in any business life cycle that force change. Some of it is not desired change, and some of it is. I think an awareness of my time is I have less on the backside than I do on the front side as I get older. So it is knowing that you need to prepare the company for succession. I would tell you that that's a lot of the people that I placed years ago are now retiring. That tells you you've been in the business a long time. So we're doing a lot of succession planning, sitting down and really helping leaders to understand what will be missing when you're gone and what does that look like. How do we build a succession team or a succession plan? So some of that is my change is building out. Ultimately, I'm not going anywhere for a while, but I in 5 years likely I'll be starting to slow down or be in a different area. So starting that process now so that it isn't all of a sudden drinking from a fire hose trying to figure out how to do that. Change goes in cycles. I would tell you that in the last probably 10, it's been very intentional change for growth as opposed to, during some of like when I started in construction, 8, 9, and 10, 2008, 2009, and 10, it was changed because there was no other option because the recession was so bad that construction companies left and right were going out of business. So the change came, and why we expanded markets, quite frankly, is because I had to. I couldn't earn a living and keep my people if we just stayed in that one space. So we started adding manufacturing, we started doing HR and IT and finance and all of these different things to support keeping the company growing while we were in a bad market in the industry of which we primarily serve. So, life cycle, economy, all of it kind of facilitates that decision.
uh, as you've made this transition, this growth, all the things you've done,
Mhm,
the tagline of this webinar is what's in the way becomes the way. If you
mhm,
were to look at a turning point in your career, the
mhm.
business, and maybe it's one of the ones you've already discussed, or maybe there's something else. Is there something that was in the way that actually became the way for you,
Yeah,
either as a leader, as the growth of the company, your reputation in the business?
mhm.
Can you think
Uh,
of something?
it was absolutely my desire to hang on to everything. Like, I was in the way. The minute I started getting out of the way is when we did this. So and EOS certainly helped with that. The What I liked about EOS is it isn't about the person, it's about solving problems. So any of us have things that happen or issues or, mistakes we make, whatever it is. So it's not about you did that. It's about, okay, here's what happened or here's the issue. How do we solve it? So that A, we can fix it and B, it doesn't happen again. So it opened up true candid dialogue that isn't pointing fingers, but true candid dialogue that became really positive and helpful and a willingness for people to share where it that's where it started to change is when we could have those conversations without it feeling like a reprimand or we're gonna wallow in what happened. So Eh, I just think if leaders really look at there's a lot of great leaders, but I would tell you most people I talk to when I ask about their leadership style always tell me they're servant leaders. I probably have met this many in my whole career who are
They're
true servant
truly
leaders.
servant leaders.
I mean,
Yeah, they all say it.
they all say that. So for me, it's digging in with a line of questioning that really gets to what is their true leadership style every leadership style has a good component and a component that can be worked on. So it's figuring out the piece of it that isn't a person's strength. There's nothing wrong with admitting that this is not an area of strength for me. But I mean, we all have egos, right? I mean, you don't own a company or you don't lead a company without somewhat of an ego. Now, confidence, not ego, is important, and I think good leaders understand that while we have to stand strong and be smart and have good communication skills and all of that, the ego piece is the piece that you have to keep in check. So, but we all have an ego to a certain degree. So it's and I would tell you, I have never been one where I don't admit that I have learned so much in my 30 years. I wish I could go back and take the person I am today and put it back 30 years ago. I'd be retired by now. But I can't do that. So now we just move forward with what we have.
It's that hindsight 2020, right? It's
Oh,
always like that.
100%.
You know what I love is the insight that you have and the putting the ego aside and
Mhm.
looking in the mirror and saying, like what you said a little bit earlier, it's like, I'm not the most empathetic. I'm get it. I'm
Right.
paraphrasing, maybe. I'm a get it done person, but I have
Mhm.
someone who's there. And that is brilliant. I just had a client of mine that I was coaching on this. And I said, your strength is your weakness.
Mhm.
And I said, that doesn't mean you need to continue down this road. I said, find yourself that second lieutenant, find yourself. And I asked him, I said, do you have someone? Because he's a business owner with like 300 employees. And he said, I don't have someone like that. And I'm not that person either. And
Well,
so the
that's
turnover
the
is
EOS
high.
philosophy.
Right,
Visionary integrator. So
right.
I'm a true visionary. I have more ideas, which, like if we ever implemented all my ideas, we would have no money. So my integrator goes, great idea, or great idea, but here's all the things we need to think about before we implement that. So absolutely that second lieutenant, critical to any business.
The difference is you did it, and a lot of people talk about it. They think about it. It's almost like the people who say, "I'm a servant leader," right?
Yeah.
That's as it's. I've had this conversation lately with people. It's like all the people that say they're good drivers,
Mhm.
and I'm like, where are all these good drivers when I'm on the road that
Mhm.
aren't letting me in, that are cutting me off? So I think it comes down to almost a comment, kind of what you made is we need to define, at least in our own mind, what is good driver, but we need to define what a servant leader is. We need to
Right.
define what a empathetic leader is. And when we start defining it, then we can see those parameters
Mhm.
and then it helps us identify what we're good at, but then it also helps us be able to see I've got blinders. These are the
Yeah.
areas I need to work on and bring someone else in.
It's hard for
So,
people to do that though.
ego.
I deal with CEOs all the time. That's my point of connection. And so many of them blame everybody else and it's really hard to look in the mirror. It just really is. And part of my job, I mean, I'm incredibly candid. I will be very honest about what I see and sometimes they don't want to hear it.
Right.
And even so much as I mean, I have a quick story. I had a gentleman and just a lovely, lovely gentleman. His daughter-in-law called me. He's 80 years old, and they just found out he had cancer. And he
Mm.
did not want anybody to take over the plant floor. He was the operations guy, and at 80 years old, he was still running the plant. She said, "I don't think he doesn't want us to do a search, but I feel like we gotta do something because he's got cancer." So I said, "Let me come over and let me just walk the floor with him." I spent an hour and a half with Chuck. We walked the floor, and we just had the best conversation, just talking about at the end, I said to him, I said, "You have to be so proud. This is, like, amazing facility." But I said, "Here's the thing. The last thing you want is for this thing not to go on because you weren't willing to just let somebody come in and help you. Like, let me help you to find somebody that you're comfortable with that can help you while you make yourself feel better." We went out, did a search, found the person. He loved him. Took a while. I mean, he was very happy that to let me do the search, right? And our team did a great job. Found the right person. David, if he didn't die a month after that guy started. I know, and
No.
I'm so grateful that he allowed us to do that. They didn't know how sick he was, and part of me, he at least when he passed, he knew. I mean, his son and daughter were also involved son and daughter-in-law were also involved in the business, but he knew that that plant was taken care of, and I was so grateful that he had that peace of mind. It could have been a horrible story the other way where he didn't allow us. So I think that that's the piece is too, it isn't just the leader that doesn't want it, but it's really helping people to understand that sometimes that transition just has to happen. I mean, 80 years old, still running a plant. I mean, he reminds me of my dad. My dad would have been this my dad died at 69, but my dad would have been the same way. He'd be still farming, running the farm, and,
Right.
that was they were all cut from that same cloth, and it's helping them to get to a place where it's like, it's okay. It's okay to have help. It's okay to understand that at some point, we can start that transition. It doesn't mean that your institutional knowledge isn't incredibly, incredibly valued, but we have to start the transition at some point.
And I think earlier than later, that succession planning that people put off. And
Oh,
here's why.
yeah.
I ask people all the time, I say, so what day are you going to die?
Yeah, exactly.
And they go, I don't know. I said, exactly. So how do you know it's not tomorrow? Well, it's not going to be tomorrow. Okay, what
Yeah.
day is it? They go, well, I don't know. I said, well, how do you know it's not tomorrow? How do you know you're not going to have a heart
You
attack? How do you
you never
know
know.
you're not going to? So start the succession planning now because anything could happen,
Yeah,
right? Tragedy, trauma, like, and I think executives, goes back to ego,
yeah.
business owners, we all think we're impervious. We think,
Right.
oh, we're going to live forever.
Yeah,
And then, things are a wreck for your family, for the
yeah.
employees. So I think that ego, I do a lot of work in ego because I find it
Yeah.
fascinating.
Mhm.
For most people, it's the biggest barrier to change. And it's hard to look in the mirror until people are, it's hard to admit it until they're in enough pain and they're bleeding. And that's almost too late, right?
Yeah.
So
I
it's
agree.
challenging.
100%, I agree.
Hey, I wanted to ask you about the culture of your company. Is it where you want it to be right now? Or is
I
there
think
room for improvement?
I
What's
think there's
what's your thought?
always room for improvement. I would tell you I enjoy the team I have very much. So we do Grateful every morning at 8 o'clock. So we start our day. We have remote employees as well as in-house. We all get on a Teams call and we talk about everybody has to say what they're grateful for every morning at 8 o'clock. What I love about that isn't just, it feeds my soul that we're all starting our day in a grateful state. But what I love is you get to know people really intimately. Like I'm grateful for my grandma and they tell the story, or I'm grateful for, you know, the garden, or I'm grateful for the sun as I drove in this morning, or you get to know a lot about what in here, what makes people tick. I always say people lose jobs because they hear because it's the culture piece. It's that
Yeah.
heart piece
It's
that
in the
makes
heart.
people work or not work. So the more you can engage with a person's heart, the better your culture is. So we've been doing Grateful forever. I had a team at one point in ERG who said, "We don't want to do Grateful anymore. It's stupid." And I said, "Well, I'm sorry, but we're going to do Grateful every day because I decided it's important. And as a leader, it's important to me." So I knew that my team was not culturally a good fit for me because they didn't fit the values are driven in from the top. They just always are. So for me, that care and concern for individuals and the ability to have courage is I know it's so important for me and people who fit my organization because it's important to me. So this team that I have today, they're delightful. They are absolutely a delightful team. Now, is there room for improvement? There's always room for improvement because you're adding people all the time, right? So every time you add someone, they bring their family's values, they bring, how they were raised, what's important to them. We have a faith-based organization. So most people, I think everybody in our organization today is a Christian. So it's kind of like, all right, so as we add people, is that something that we want to make sure? I mean, there's all these things that you have to think about as you add people to your organization. Um, But I do we just we have a firm that we're gonna be having join us first of the year, and, we spent a tremendous amount of time getting to know them, not just professionally, but personally, because all of that dictates how the culture goes. So, but anytime you stop focusing on culture is when it starts to fall apart. I
I
100%
love
believe
that.
that.
I love that you said that because I always say, I talked about this in my keynotes. I said, if you don't define the culture, a culture
Yeah,
gets created anyway.
it
And as a
does.
leader, you're right, it starts at the top. It's defining how do we operate and are we grateful and do we care and do we have
Yeah,
concern? What would you say to the leaders that hear this and go, oh, that's a bunch of garbage. I don't have time
yeah.
for that. That's a waste of time. That's too touchy feely.
Well, and again, we all make decisions. For me, it's if you don't think it's important, that's fine, but find somebody in your organization that does. I mean, again, most people have an HR person, and part of why they have human resources is to help to define culture. We're all gonna I mean, whether you wanna admit it or not, you're gonna have employee relation issues and wins, right? We're gonna win sometimes, we're gonna lose sometimes. So what we do is we do value shout outs. So we have our values posted everywhere. And when somebody emulates our values in a really positive way, we do a shout out. Hey, Anne did passion for the people. And here's how she emulated that. And to me, it's a little thing. I mean, I don't walk around saying you're
Huge.
not culturally, that's not a good, I don't have time for that. We're all really busy. But we do try to make sure that we give permission for people to do shout outs when they see someone who does something that, emotional maturity is one of our values. That's a big deal. I mean, a lot of times when you have the different generations, there's different levels of emotional maturity. And what does that look like? We have behaviors underneath our values. So when people show those behaviors, we just want to give them a shout out. Culture is a tough thing, though. I mean, and it does this based on, I mean, not all that long ago, DEI was very prevalent with it. Everybody's cultures. Now it's starting to wane. There is no easy science to building a strong culture. You have to do what's right for your organization, and everyone is different, which is one of the reasons why I love to go out and I love to meet the leadership team. I love to walk plant floors. I love to, you know, spend time within an organization. Is it loud? It's the things that people don't pay attention to that are the most important. I have two clients. They do exactly the same thing, and they're in the same town, and they both are very large. They couldn't be more different if I wrote the script. One is incredibly entrepreneurial, always willing to try things, hire people that are way outside the box because they're great people and they know they're talented and they will figure out the rest. The other one is very structured, I mean, it's quiet when you walk in their organization. You can almost hear a pin drop. Everybody has their role. Everybody has a job description. We follow I mean, they do exactly the same thing, like exactly the same thing. They're competitors, but the cultures, people don't mesh very well unless they don't like one or the other, simply because they're so very different in how they roll on a day to day basis. My understanding and going and feeling all of that is important. It's like when I walk in and it's quiet, I'm like, ooh, somebody who's like me, who's animated and e energetic and probably not gonna be a great fit as it relates to working there. Now, can I help them to figure out who is the right person? Absolutely. But it's knowing what it is. Like I tell people, I am not here to judge. Good, bad, or indifferent, we all have had really crappy times in our history of our company, and we all have had fabulous times. I don't judge. My job is to help you make it whatever you want it to be. I don't care what that is. You make that decision. My job is to help you.
I love the comment you just made. I think a big key, a takeaway on that is it's knowing what it is. I think
Yeah,
it truly is knowing what your culture is. Defining, I think it's critical to define it, but knowing what it is. And many people, if you say, what's your culture? They don't know because they haven't defined it.
right.
But I use Starbucks or Chick-fil-A as examples,
Mhm,
and maybe the old Southwest Airlines, right? Previous. But
mhm.
you go to Starbucks, you know what that culture is going to be if you're going to go work there. You know it's going to be fast paced. You know you have to learn. You know
Right.
you have to serve. If you go to Chick-fil-A and you're 15 years old, you know if someone says
Mhm.
thank you, you say my pleasure, right?
Right.
We know the culture. And Southwest, it was called the Love Airlines for a reason, right? It was like
Mhm.
Herb Kelleher literally loved his employees, and it was all about employee first, taking care. And so you create this culture, and then when that gets known, you're able to do exactly what you said. You can hire to that culture,
Mhm.
but you also attract that culture
Right.
because now people come into a stoic place. And if that's not for them, they know it. They're
Right.
like, oh, yeah, these two employers you talked about, well, I like
Mhm.
this entrepreneur. No, I don't want an entrepreneur. So I think that is a huge takeaway for people that are listening here is know what that culture is. Don't be
Right.
blind to it and just go, well, I don't know. It's just it is. I think it's really consciously think about it, but
Yeah.
consciously define it. So I
Yeah.
love that, Sharon.
Yeah. No,
So
I
I want,
it's a challenge that we all deal with.
yeah. Well, I want to close with the last question here, which
Mhm.
is comes from a couple places. When I was young, I remember aunts and uncles saying, "How's school? How are you doing?"
Mhm.
And I'm like, why don't they ask me this? And then my kids, it's so funny. My kids, if I ask too many questions, they're like, oh, you're being nosy. And then in the second breath, they say, you don't know anything about me. So I'm like, well, what questions should I be asking you that I'm not asking? So Sharon, that's the question to wrap up with here is what is the question you wish people would ask you, but they don't ask you because they don't know to ask you, but you would love it if they would. And
Yeah.
then obviously, what would the answer be?
You know, I would tell you that with 30 years of doing what I have done, it would be great. And typically, I don't wait till the question is asked because I have learned that if I'm not candid, at some point we're never going to fix whatever it is going on. But I would love if they would say, from your lens, what is it that you see that would be the top 3 things that you would work on if you were me? People don't ask that question. They don't say, "So, from your lens," because 'cause I'm coming from the outside in. It's so much easier to look at another organization than it is to look at your own. It
Oh,
just
yeah.
is. I mean, you're too close to it. You especially the CEOs who have grown up within an organization, you know all the different so you're so close to it that sometimes you lose sight of the outside perspective. So for me, it's like, so from your lens, just knowing what you know and what you've seen, what's your thoughts? Like, what would you think we should work on? Or where do you think is that opportunity for a new revenue stream or all of those things? Because I always have those ideas, especially the longer I work with someone. I've got clients that I've had 30 years. I mean, I've got one client, they were 17,000,000 and now they're almost 1,000,000,000. Like, I
Oh my
grew up
gosh.
with this company. I know. So, and you watch the evolution, you watch the type of people they hire over time, and it's one of those things where you wanna say, "Okay, now that you're here, now I think you should think about this because this would be" or in the industry. I mean, we live in the industry. I know more than I wanna know, to be honest with you, about what's going on in the industry. I hear all the gossip. All the male-dominated industries, especially, they always say women gossip. I hate to tell you, the male-dominated industries are way worse than the women-dominated industries. I could call a construction CEO and say, "Hey, give me a call back. I need to talk to you," and they'll call me back 24, 48 hours. But if I call and say, "I have gossip," 5 minutes later, they're on my phone. They
Too
love that.
funny. Too
So,
funny.
yeah, so it's one of those things where I'm like, "You know what? Let's just talk about what's going on and what are the trends? Like, what are the trends that we're seeing? Because we are a 6-month leading indicator for sure. If I remember early '08, I had a brand new office building and I was paying a lot of money for this new office building. I built it in 2002. It was 11,000 square feet. Beautiful, beautiful office building. And I'm starting to see this tumbleweed coming at me that we've got a recession coming in construction and this is ugly. The architects were starting to not get work and the developers were really, and I'm like, okay, this is not good because I don't know if I'm going to make it through this. I sold my building full price and then some right before the recession hit. Had I not done it, I would
Oh,
not be here
smart.
today. You
Yeah,
got to
that
follow the signs.
that insight is there. So, do you wish people would ask you that question, right? What are
Yeah.
the three things? I know it's hard to see the picture from the frame, right? When you're in the
Mhm.
frame. But
Oh,
let's
for
say I
sure.
asked you that question right now and I said, what are three things you know as a leader, as a human
Mhm.
being that you need to work on? Do you know what those would be? Would you be willing to
Yeah.
answer?
Well, getting out of my team's way so that they're ready to take over when I'm done. I will likely be in-house 4 to 5 more years. I will always work. I'm just wired that way. I mean, I am my father's daughter. I was raised on a dairy farm and I learned how to work. So I will always do something, but likely not like I'm working today. I mean, I work all the time and that's a bad thing. Um, that would be my second one is to learn to start to enjoy life a little more. My significant other had stage 4 lymphoma 4 years ago. He just got a clean scan yesterday. So I'm very happy about that. But
That
that'll give you tremendous awareness about what's really important, right? Is a health issue. So for me, it's learning to enjoy the little things and learning to enjoy more life more and not I'm so always heavily engaged in what it is we do and I love what I do. I mean, I love it as much today as the day I started. So I'm passionate about it, but it can overtake my life as well. So learning to enjoy life more, learning to get out of the team's way so they can evolve, and then just really paying attention to the signs, especially through EOS on how we grow because I have a very big goal that I wanna be at by the time I start to roll out of the president CEO role. So, paying attention to what are those things that we can do that will help us to grow quicker, help us to grow effectively, and grow in the right markets. Obviously, I gotta pay attention to AI. I'm not a technology person, but I have a gentleman on my team. He's in Purdue University right now taking an AI, class to learn all about not just what AI can do, but the functionality of how it can help to enhance our business. I'm not one to ignore the signs. I pay attention. I want to know what is going to happen and where we can implement and make the business better. So it's paying attention to all of it and not letting I don't wanna be a person who sticks their hand in my head in the sand and said, "You know what? It's not gonna impact us, so I'm just gonna ignore it." I've never been that type of person. My personal philosophy, I told you this last time we talked, is be the buffalo. The buffalo is the only mammal that runs toward the storm to get through it quicker. All the other mammals run away from it, hoping to avoid a storm. I am a buffalo. We're gonna run into that
love it.
storm, and we're gonna figure it out.
And for another conversation, we'll have to talk about AI and the impact in
Yeah.
the world of recruiting, the world of hiring. But because of time,
Yeah.
unless you have a quick snippet on that,
Uh,
we'll
that's a TBD. Who
okay.
knows, right?
Yeah, who knows? Who knows? Because we're still human, and yeah, there's a lot to it because personality. So much of work is personality, not just skill.
Yeah,
If you're
I
hiring
agree.
for culture, if you hire for
Mhm,
culture. So Sharon, you've been absolutely lovely. It's been so nice talking to you. If someone wants to learn more about your business or
mhm.
work with you, what is the best way for them to reach out?
Well, so I'm on LinkedIn, and that's a great way to find me because I'm very active on LinkedIn. I post a lot of personal stories on LinkedIn, so if you wanna learn a lot about me, that's the place to go. It's real life stories about what we deal with as business people, so, that's a great way. Employment Resource Group, Appleton, Wisconsin, and then all my information is on our website, my cell phone number, everything. So if anybody and it's Sharon at ergsearch.com is my email. So anybody can reach out to me anyway. None of my numbers, my cell phone is public knowledge. Anybody can find me in any variety of ways. I also am happy if people just have a question on what to do next, just reach out. I mean, I do a lot of conversations with individuals to say, all right, let's figure it out together.
Love it. And I'll make sure I post all that in the show notes with
Great.
the podcast here. Well,
Perfect.
Sharon, thank you so much for being with me. I really appreciated it and appreciate all of your insight and wisdom that you shared. And folks, thank you for listening. If you've enjoyed this, please share it, recommend it to others. And if you know some amazing individuals that I should be talking to on the show, please let me know and please subscribe. Uh, I'm David Susan, and this is Inside the Leader's Mind. Thanks.